Hey guys, and welcome to the Garage Athlete Show. We are on episode 28, which I believe means we've been running for 6 months now.
Yeah,
Like
it's quite
pretty
too
much, I think we've missed 1 week in 6 months, which I don't think is bad. Going to say this kind of started out just
much.
as answering
Where's our
questions
sponsorship?
on
Where's our
when
hundreds and thousands of pounds? Come on.
we need to get more of the guys listening and downloading. Like, that's the big one. So if you're listening to this, make sure that whatever you're subscribed on, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, that you follow and you get it to download it each week. That makes a big difference in terms of the amount of people kind of we reach. It helps us get up higher in terms of the rankings, and it just means that, well, basically whenever we ask to get a guest on, I don't know if you found this, Dan, but one of the first questions that they'll always ask is, what's your downloads? So I know a lot more people are streaming it because they listen on Spotify essentially. But what you can do is you can just change the settings so it just automatically downloads in the background, and then after it's downloaded about 5, it will just start deleting any of the ones that are like sat on your phone. So don't worry about it kind of eating into all your memory space. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. Make sure you're downloading the episodes just because it's going to kind of help us in the new year. So how are you anyways, Dan? How is life in the hood up north?
Well,
I think, are you guys in tier 3 still?
Yeah, we're in tier 3, man. We've been riding out tier 3 for a while. Yeah, I'm okay, mate. Like, work is ticking over, and I'm a bit what do you call it? Just still in a glass cage of emotion with the twins and everything. So it's kind of working. They're great. They're really good most of the time. It's just that during the night, they're babies. They need to get up, but because there's 2 of them, it takes twice as long. So me and my wife are taking it in shifts. So I sort of stay on looking after them for as long as I can. So I normally get to around 2 or 3, and then she takes over. And then she does them, and then my eldest is off school at the moment, so we don't have to rush to get her out in the mornings, but just need to look after our home. But yeah, we're kind of making it work.
What have they said about primary schools returning? So now secondary schools are going to do a staggered like return date. So for me, Josh is going, who's the middle child, he's going back to school as normal. He's in year 6, whereas Ben isn't meant to be going back to like the 11th. But with all the craziness that's going on right now, I'm not sure if the kids will go back like after Christmas. But like, what have they said kind of up by you? Has there been anything in terms of like staggering going back or anything?
I have no idea. I know they're going back not on the Monday, but the Tuesday in January. I think that first week. So I think we're just kind of, because there's only one class for Clodagh's year, so I think they're just sending them straight in. Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, it doesn't change too much, but yeah, they're just going in and doing that. So yeah.
Well, Willow should be back, hopefully back to nursery in January, depending on what's happening with the tiers. My mother-in-law. So basically, when I first went self-employed and was working from home, my mother-in-law used to come on a Monday and look after Willow, which gave me Mondays, Tuesdays as like working days. I would then look after her on a Wednesday. Natalie's off on a Thursday, and then she'd go to nursery on a Friday. But like recently, because she had to have like an operation on her foot, and then all the COVID stuff like kicked off, like for the past 6 months, like I've been operating on like, well, just being able to work on Tuesdays and Fridays. So yeah, it'll be nice to be able to kind of get a little bit more time where I can get on top of like some more of those like important tasks. There's the big plans for like my online training platform. Next year, I want to level everything up. This year's been kind of the launching of it. Next year, there's going to be some big investments in developing it to kind of go to that next level and get some more like quality transformations and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be, I think it's one of those things where I've been speaking about a lot recently, like on my stories and stuff. I think people are starting to fall into that trap of getting into like a negative mindset spiral, and kind of like once you get into it, it like spirals out of control. And as you said, like things are still ticking over. Like there's always a pivot, there's always a workaround. Like you got COVID while your partner was like giving birth. Like, there's not really a worse situation to kind of be dealing with all at the same time, but you managed to get through it, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you can always get through things like that. It's luckily everyone's alive, which is the best bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, touch and go for a little bit. But yeah, we're still here. We're still going. It's hard. Like, there's no worry and feeling. It's not bad to feel really bad about it.
Yeah.
I think it's it is hard for a lot of people this year. Like, I normally always go down south at Christmas, but not this year, obviously. And it's gonna be tough. Yeah, I will miss those few days of family and not seeing them. That's going to be really tough. But we have to keep moving forward, and things do tend to get better. When that is, I don't know. But just moving forward, just it's the standard shit, advice everyone gives, but just control what you control, and focus on what you can make better.
Yeah, and it's okay to feel sad about the fact that you're missing out on seeing family, etc. But don't set up camp and live there. Don't be one of these people that's like jumping on Facebook and all you ever see is them moaning about this happening and that happening and the government are doing X, Y, Z. And it's like, but you're like compounding the problem because you're putting all your focus on it and that's all you're focusing on. And there's so many things, as you said, that are within our control that we do have complete control over, that you could be focusing on and having kind of like a positive outcome from it. So like for me, I was stuck in isolation for 2 weeks with Willow. So I was just taking the positive of I got to spend some really good quality one-to-one time with my daughter. I couldn't leave the house, but I could spend time with her that I will never get back. Like next year, she'll be at nursery, 30 hours a week or whatever it is when they're 3. The year after that, she'll be kind of going to school, which is just madness to think in like a year or 2. But it's kind of that thing of, as you said, kind of being grateful for what you do have. I know a lot's been taken away from us this year, but there's also a lot of things out there to cherish and kind of and just keep remembering that it won't be like this forever. We know it won't. Like even what is it, the Spanish flu that killed however many millions, that disappeared after a little while. So, and they don't have the billions of pounds we can invest into vaccines and stuff. Right, I'm just trying to pull up the questions. So it's probably going to be a short episode today, guys, just because we didn't get that many questions come up on the board. So yeah, if you guys want longer episodes, put questions up in the Facebook group. So Dave,
maybe they're trying to tell us something.
Oh, yeah. Pardon?
I said maybe they're trying to tell us something.
Oh yeah, they're sick of seeing our faces. Well, what we'll start doing is we'll start talking more about superheroes and stuff that's completely not gym related.
Yeah.
And they'll have to start putting the questions in there so that we get back on task.
And my gym renovations and my new
gym renovations and house renovations.
I'm an Ollie lifter now. So funny, literally, like you put like Ollie. Mate, honestly, I've been doing like hand cleans. And bear in mind, like I probably did like training cleans and power cleans and hand cleans and all that kind of stuff. Because I don't know, so yeah. For 9 years, I pretty much started doing all of that stuff. But I've started doing it a bit now, and I was like, "Oh my god, are you an Olympic lifter now? Are you doing CrossFit? What's the plan here? What are you doing? Are you leaving there powerlifting, or are you moving on?" I'm just like, just want a nice clean. Like, I just want to do a clean. But of course, it's like, I'm doing CrossFit now. It's like, well, it's like Olympic lifting was around before CrossFit. You know, like I'm pretty sure they did it right beforehand. I mean, CrossFit's been really good for weightlifting.
It's the only weightlifting sport that's in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think it's
called Olympic lifting.
Yeah. I think it's been around for a while. There was actually CrossFit now. It's like, well, no, not really. It's really nice.
That sounds like a hell of a lot of hard work. Like that's a big shift going from powerlifting to CrossFit.
Yeah, well, what's his name? Josh Lancaster is doing it now. He's a British. Yeah, he's a British. No, was it Josh? No, it's not Lancaster. It's Josh Greenfield. Sorry, I think his name is. Lancaster's a coach, I think. Yeah, he's like a British squat record holder. I think he's a world record holder actually in the 105 class at squat. Like massive dude. And he's gone into CrossFit. I think he's just like wanted something new, and he's gone really into it. So I think he's just transferred that winning mentality and doing his best into going into CrossFit now. So it's been quite cool to watch.
Kind of. I think the thing about CrossFit is because it's a hybrid athlete sport, people can go from being like what's his name, that Matt Fraser or whatever was like an Olympic level weightlifter before he went into CrossFit, and like that's why he's just sick at like the cleans and everything like that, because he was on the Olympic team. And if you hear, have you ever watched any of the documentaries on Netflix about CrossFit?
Yeah, I love him.
So in that, he's like bitching, because they always say like he's good at the weightlifting things because he's short. It's not because he was like a gold medalist Olympic lifter. It's, he's got the advantage because he's short. And he's like, what the fuck do I have to do to get recognized for this? It's not because I'm short. I was having some banter with Elliot about the same thing about him being short the other day, even though I think he's a
Elliot is a block. I don't know if you've ever seen Elliot. He's a fucking block, mate. He's Spongebob. He's a square. Like he would be the perfect like loose head prop, or maybe even a hooker. He's just a fucking.
I think a hooker because he's short.
Yeah, but he's just like, I imagine it'd be quite tough to move. But yeah, he is. He's got. It's fucking SpongeBob. Sorry, I really enjoy this stuff. Big shout out to him.
Yeah, I think that's what Jay calls him all the time, isn't it? SpongeBob. Okay,
I think I started it, and I think Jay took over and loved it. I'm the schoolyard bully sometimes. So
you are the schoolyard bully of the admin group.
Yeah, and then Jay jumps on the bandwagon and joins. He's like my side. What's his name? Like the other crony that just joins in with it.
Yeah.
Because you're Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm like, come on guys, let's all get along. Hey,
Right. So, Dave Bracey Brace, advice on dealing with injuries and frustration of not being able to give 100%. I think you've got a lot of experience with this, haven't you, Matey?
Yeah. I saw that one on the group. It's brutal, man. It's so hard. Like, I do think about it sometimes. Like, you got, like you say, two ways to deal with it. You can sit there and let it consume you, that you're never going to be able to give it 100%. And it is tough. Sometimes it does get to you and you have your dark days. But then other days you got to think, well, everyone has got something wrong with them in some way, but it doesn't mean you should stop lifting or stop training. For me, it's always, with training, especially home training, you're always trying to find a way. You're constantly trying to find a solution. So say if like, for example, my back, knee and shoulder over lockdown was just rubbish. Like it was really tough, and that hit me quite hard, that one. I just had to find different ways to lift, whether it was more metabolic conditioning based or more, doing movements I haven't done for a while. You have to sort of switch it up and change it, but it is hard. I think you get to understand what you respond to and what your body's good at and what it's not good at doing. So what you need to start doing is finding trends in your training or finding patterns of what works and what doesn't. So, what would one be for me? Maybe pushing, maybe deadlifts up to say 4 times a week is too much. 3 times, well, here's a good one. 3 times I make really good strength gains on, like excellent strength gains. But I guess the caveat is my back gets exposed to a lot more load. And with my L5S1 disc issues, it's probably not the best idea. You can ride it for a while, but then it hits you as you go down the road. So what I'm having to do is be more patient with how long things take, and maybe spending more time in variations. I mean, that's one of the things I've started doing a lot more, is putting emphasis into lifts I don't really work on, or a slight variation. So, I mean, I've been doing block pulls instead of deadlifts recently, and it feels good. And it actually feels like it's working part of my deadlift that traditional deadlifts don't do. So say for someone like me who uses a lot of leg drive and deadlift, I always fail in the bottom half, so I probably don't get the opportunity to work the last half of the portion of the deadlift enough. So by doing block pulls, I feel I'm really working my posterior chain a lot more, maybe similar to the way a bodybuilder does. And I'd actually recommend bodybuilders do their deadlifts touch and go, not banging off the floor, but like a light touch and go just to keep the tension on. So I'll be doing sets of 8 with the touch and go off mats. And it seems to really be hitting the posterior chain like really hard in a way that I don't normally get in a traditional deadlift. So you're kind of changing things slightly to keep yourself healthy. But
I've had to adapt my deadlifts like that because, well, one, my neighbors were complaining because I was doing like traditional deadlifts and dropping it at the top, and the vibrations were going through into their living room. So, and my neighbor's a bit of an asshole. And two, as you said, or what I've done is I've stopped lifting with a belt when I'm deadlifting. So that's restricted the amount of weight that I can use. But then I'm focusing on that nice and slow on the way down through the eccentric. And as you said, a little tap and then almost go again. So I'm not taking that time to kind of reset. But I've noticed, like when I've done my check-in photos and stuff, especially just after my mini cut, like my lower back and like that Christmas tree effect is so much better now because my erector spinae has been getting developed over the past however many weeks and months because I took the belt off essentially.
Yeah, well, you can certainly, it's always good when you see the gains of, more often than not, I always say to my class, like, do you feel it's working? Because if it is working, if you do feel it working, chances are it is working. I'm like, if you don't feel it working, chances are it's not working. So this is where, in the group, a lot of people talk about different things where they've like changed the grip on a bicep curl or say, I feel cable curls a lot more than a standing curl. So I'm like, well, yeah, well, that's great. Go with it, like, because it's obviously doing something, whether it's just a change of stimulus or not. It is good to go with the things that actually keep working. I mean, going back to the injuries and stuff, it's hard because it's almost like a snowball effect. Like you said, Dave's talking about he's got problems with his back and then his shoulder kicks off, and it's a tough battle, and especially when you've lifted for a long time. You'll find, I think, with lifting, you'll get to around that sort of 10 to 15 year mark, and then things really start breaking down. That's when you have to start being patient and cracking on and being accountable and sort of really maybe taking your warm-ups a bit more seriously. I mean, by warm-ups, I don't mean 1,000 different rotator cuff exercises. I mean things like banging out some sets of 25 before you start, or if you're going to lift heavy weights, okay, we'll do 3 or 4 sets at the reps you're trying to work to get the blood flow and get things moving. I mean, that is warming up. That is all part of the process of getting strong. There are times when you can probably just jump straight in, but I would say, on days where you're not feeling it, or if you have a history of problems, that's when you need to probably put a bit more emphasis into that side of things. I mean, probably for Dave specifically, it's saying you just kind of have to work around him. I mean, the best thing I can say to you is pick some exercises you've never done, or you train very little, or you put at the back of your training session, put them at the front, or try some different stuff, or try, if you powerlift, go bodybuilding, do something completely different and find that spark to train again, because then you don't have to worry about doing the same things that get you injured all the time. You can enjoy it again, which is why we do it, right?
So Dave's actually just signed up to coaching with me. So he's going to be switching across to some bodybuilding style training. And the prognosis is, I think he's got tendonitis in his shoulder. So for me, it's going to be, right, we're going to work on, just like we said last week, more pulling than pushing, probably take out any overhead presses, and strengthen up posterior chain, etc. It's probably just a section that has been neglected for a little while. But in terms of back to the original question of training around injuries, what you want to ask yourself is, number one, is it an overuse injury? So for example, like tendonitis in like your ankles from running, then you're probably going to want to stop running, rest, take some anti-inflammatories, like let the inflammation and everything kind of come down, and then work on the reasons behind it's coming up. Again, it might be tendonitis in the elbow or something like that. It's like an inflammation of that joint. You might just want to go and look at what in your training is setting it off. So if you keep a logbook for your training, keep also a symptoms section within your logbook. And if you're starting to notice a flare up of, say, the elbow, and you trained pull the day before, right, what movements were in there that I think could have set it off? and just have a practice of just dropping individual exercises out and see if there's any triggers within those from kind of those individual exercises. And the other thing then would be is if it's like an injury that's not related to kind of training, say, I don't know, you've broken your leg or whatever, probably not that extreme, but if it's not directly linked to the area that you're trying to train, it's like learn to work around it. So if you've got maybe a rotator cuff issue, focus more on pulling than pushing, retracting the shoulder blades, working on postural issues. If you've got a knee or an ankle injury, what sort of upper body training could we do? Could you do single leg work so that you're still training the leg that's not injured, so you don't atrophy over your entire body? So making sure the body can be split into kind of different parts, and there's no reason why you should stop training. So if you've got a leg injury, there's no reason why you should stop training kind of like your upper half. If you've got an arm injury, there's no reason you can't still train your legs. You've just got to work around it as best you can. And the biggest thing when you're injured is it's a mental game. It's very easy to utilize an injury as an excuse to just stop everything, but you'll find coming back once you've just stopped everything much, much harder because of that momentum. It's like when you get into bad habits, it then takes you a while to kind of get out of them. The same thing when you get into good habits. Like if you build that momentum and try and keep those good habits going, it's easier just to kind of like pivot slightly than have to send it back in completely the other direction. Right, I think that about covers it. Just so yes, I don't know, I've got a problem with right doubt. Yeah. Tony Oxley, getting over a mental block when weight starts getting heavy. Since I've gone past squatting 115 kilos, physically I can do the squat, but in my head I'm thinking, shit, this weight on my back is heavy. Okie dokie. Probably.
Heavy singles in training. Ooh,
okay.
That's yeah, he needs to put heavy singles in your training. Just get used to it. It's a mental thing. A lot of the times, when some lifters need it, some don't. If you struggle mentally when you get to heavy weights, if you need to get good at heavy weights, you need to do heavy weights. So you need to put in heavy singles weekly to get you over your fear of squatting. The other one you can do is do a overload walkout. So load up, say if you're a 115 squat, load the bar up to 114, take it out of the rack and just stand with it for about 20 seconds just on your back. Just stand there, then put it back in. So if you've got access to bands, another one you can do is a reverse band squat, where you load it up heavy over your max, probably about 10% over your max, squat it, and then the bands will help you in the bottom and then come back up. My favorite option, a heavy singles. So if your max is 115, I would probably go.
Okay.
I would probably go between I would probably go 110, between 105 and 110, and just do that every time you have a squat session. Squat 105, 110, and it will get you used to that. Get you used to the heavy load, and then once you get used to that, your lifts will start feeling better. And then the other thing is just get stronger with lighter loads. So just keep getting stronger, keep building the volume, and then when you start touching those heavier loads, they won't feel as heavy anymore. But
yeah, that was going to be the exact thing I said about like heavy loaded, just getting underneath the bar, feeling that heavy load. And to be honest, it never really, the fear kind of never goes. But as long as you're like incrementally increasing the weights, then it's not such like a big jump. So going from like 115 to 130 and trying to do full squats with it, it's going to feel like a massive jump. Whereas going from like 115 to 117 and a half. So buying some like fractional plates where it's like 1.25 kilos on each side, because those plates, that they are tiny, like it doesn't feel like you're adding anything. But if you're adding on 2.5 kilos each week, and over 4 weeks, you're then going to have added, 10. If you can do it kind of incrementally every single week. Obviously, you're not going to do add 2.5 kilos and keep the reps the same kind of like every single week, but it's just about incrementally like progressing that overload. I even know a guy that down the gym that's got the massive washers that are like 500 grams each. So mentally he's adding more on each time, but it's like half a kilo or a kilo kind of every single time. But because he's doing it every single week, he feels in his head he's making progress. And if he looks over his program over like a 6-week period and he's added 600 grams or whatever it is, but it's still half a kilo.
See, I only use fractional plates for lifters that can only lift under, say, if you bench under 50 kilos, I think those fractional plates are great. They're really good. Otherwise, I think I don't like them. I think, it's only a one little, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm bigger, I suppose, but like those one little plates, like you can lift that, in my opinion. We can just change the reps around, but they are good. They're a nice tool, but people go a bit overboard on that side of things. I mean, like you say, another way to progress is just do a few more reps, or go into a strength phase and then go back into a bodybuilding style phase. But I guess when you're constantly lifting the same thing every week with, say if, I guess, my favorite shoulder exercise is a seated dumbbell overhead press. And if, you get best growth between 8 and 10 reps, maybe you need to do those little things like adding the little weights on. But it's not something I personally like to use, but it can be done, yeah. But like I think for that heavy feeling of getting over it crushing you, you have to get used to that feeling of it crushing you. It's the only way to get better.
Yeah, definitely. And I know it took, from personal experience, like when I was working at a gym, like I'd never squatted over, I was always afraid to go over like 100, 110 kilos. I just thought like my back would break as soon as I went over that, because I've always been like skinny and was afraid of eating at one point. And then one of the lads that I worked with was a power lifter. And once I was training him and because his numbers kept going up, it's that competition side, isn't it? Like I've always been competitive. I've always played sport. So because my training partner was getting stronger, I had to keep up with him. So even when I'd unrack the bar and go, holy shit, this feels heavy, I had to get those reps out. So maybe add in, I know at the moment it's probably a little bit hard to be training with a training partner, but add in some friendly competition. So maybe find somebody who's a similar strength to you, and I don't know, send each other like squat videos or whatever it is. So you have to be beating those numbers, because your mate's going to send you a video and he hit 120 for a set of 6. Now you've got to try and match him or beat him. Like I think rivalry within our environment can be productive. Like don't let it get to the point where it's destructive, where you get yourself injured because you must be kind of beating that individual. Just but a little bit of like friendly banter, a bit of like pushing from a training partner definitely has helped me in the past, like push through any sort of plateaus kind of I've hit.
Yeah, no, essentially training environment is huge. I mean, it's hard to do at home on your own, but I think sometimes having not a rival, but yeah, someone that's similar to you and what they're doing is always good. I mean, Instagram, you can't get away from it these days with social media. So you can use it sometimes to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that about covers it for the questions. I've got to go and walk the dog before it gets dark, because Willow gets scared in the dark when we walk the dog. So yeah, she was traumatized the other day when I walked her and it got dark as we were walking the dog. And she literally, because she's up on my neck once it gets dark, she was like gripping on my head going, Daddy, I want to go home. I was like, okay, we're going to have to cut this walk short, Sky, sorry. But
what's the cutie? She's so sweet. But yeah, you get yourself out, mate. I'm going to go. Where are we going? We're going to go to Screwfix, aren't we?
Yeah. Screwfix. She helping you? Has she been Daddy's little helper today then?
Yeah, she's really helpful. We've been sorting out the house, going to Screwfix. Yeah, I'm just trying to cram as much housework as I can before Christmas. But basically my house can be a building site. I've currently got no floor down on the downstairs. I've just got floorboards. So
brilliant.
Hopefully try and get some get the plywood down, nail it down, and then hopefully be ready to floor.
Awesome, buddy. Right, well, I will catch you next week.
All right, mate. You take care, buddy. Good to see you.
No worries. Bye for now.
Bye.